Hello and welcome to the Anomaly Project, the show that looks at all aspects of the paranormal and anomalous world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as he does every week is paranormal researcher, lecturer, and investigator Steve Mera. Steve, this is going to be another journey of a show. How are you doing?
Doing very well. I'm looking forward to tonight, actually, because I know Stephen's got a book out, and been a lot of talk about this book. So there's the opportunity to get into that somehow, and then maybe sort of be able to give it a bit of publicity, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you say, joining us tonight is paranormal researcher, medium, and author of the recently released A Psychic Salesman from Minimum to Medium, Mr. Stephen Bird. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
It's no problem. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good conversation. So I'm thinking the best place to start on this, because I think a lot of people, myself included, often use the word medium and mediumship and kind of get confused about what it actually means, what it actually entails. So perhaps you could explain to us, what exactly is a medium, and how did you find yourself, what was your journey into learning about this?
A medium is basically it's a we're a transmitter from spirit. So we have, well, there's different types of mediums, but I suppose, the spiritual medium that works with spirit is basically the transmitter from the spirit world to the earth. So we can connect to the higher side of life and then pass messages of hope and healing and love and etc. to people that need it most. But the thing is about being a medium, it opens up so many different ways of looking at things and so many wonders that I've only just scratched the surface after 7 years. So I've been a medium for probably six, I would say 5 or 6 years. Started in 2017, and I went to a spiritualist church in Stirling, which I ended up being the vice president of late, but now I'm not. But that's another story. And that's where I suppose that's where I was taught how to basically tune in. I had a feeling from when I was quite young that I was a little bit different. In fact, quite a lot different, if the truth be known, because I saw a lot of strange and weird things when I was younger. And it was only in the last sort of 5 to 10 years when I realised that I know why I'm a bit feeling a little bit different. And it's basically because I'm a mediumship, but I don't just do mediumship. I do quite a lot of work with angels, and I have a lot of experience of UFO sightings, recording cases, and of late of last year, I saw an alien when I was 15, but as of last year, I saw two aliens when we're doing an investigation with the organization called Strange Phenomena Investigations. It's run by Malcolm Robinson, and we were in the Ken Papal Hill, which is a Neolithic monument, and I saw a couple of aliens. Long story short, I had a conversation with them. They told me who they were, where they came from, why they were here, and then I allowed them to channel me telepathically, and that interview was recorded by Malcolm himself and a friend who was also there. So, not just a medium. I would call myself an alien contactee. So yeah, and again with that, just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I can imagine. Steve, what I find interesting immediately there is we're already drifting into different fields of interest. You would think this is one thing, but it clearly isn't. What are your thoughts on that? It's fascinating stuff, obviously.
It's always the
Uh,
way. I think people that are gifted, say gifted or second sight, clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient, psychics, mediums, there's many different names for it. But I think I'll just say it's expanded consciousness, because there's so many different ways explaining the same thing. But I mean, you're open to a lot more. And of course, it's pretty common now that we talk to so many people which have had what you might refer to as mediumistic experiences. But the UFO stuff was always creeping in there. So it's quite interesting that, we've for quite a number of years now, we've been hammering home that, this divide between the subjects of ufology and the paranormal, because like I say, there has been times when paranormal guys wouldn't even entertain the UFO subject, and vice versa. But I think, as time's moved on, we've accepted the fact, and many do now, that it does all, there are paranormal aspects to the subject of ufology. And if you are open in this enhanced ability to be able to see beyond the veil, it does incorporate other things. Have you ever actually, Stephen, I want to ask you, have you ever, I mean, I know about the UFO stuff. I know about your psychic type of experiences that you've had, communications. Have you ever come across anything which is a little bit untoward, well, I would say, which you would probably might want to stay away from? I'm just curious.
Um, I have. I saw a demon once. Um, it was during COVID. I was pretty much finished the first part of the book, and I was writing some poetry this day, and I just decided to go for a walk. And I used to live by the River Forth, and a lot of my book is based around the River Forth and my synchronicity from previous lives I've had. And I was taking my normal walk, and I do actually do a lot of work with my guardian angel. And this one particular afternoon, my guardian angel said, "Be careful, Stephen. There's a demon." So I automatically got a little bit of the hackles went up on my neck. I was
Yeah.
feeling a little bit, right, what's going on here? And I looked into the distance, about 200 yards, 300 yards away, and there's a gap between two really big hedges, and I saw this. I can only describe as a vortex portal, whatever you want to call it, open up. It was a whirlpool of sort of white and silver light, and then this little object. Well, I'm just going to say little. It was about 3 foot, and it was a. There's a mythical creature called a pukwudgie. I don't know if you've heard of that. I think it's a pukwudgie. Pukwudgie. The Native American Indians. There are plenty of drawings about it on the internet, but it was. I was told it was a demon, but it actually looked a little bit like a pukwudgie, and it came running towards me, gnashing its teeth, tail going all over the place. It looked quite fierce. At this
Right.
point, my guardian angel stood in front of me. Then I had my spirit team that jumped in as well, which would have been my granddad and my great uncle, and then my guide of the time, my spirit guide of the time. They basically flanked me from all sides. And I looked at this thing, and it looked at me, saw what was around me, and decided to do one. Basically, turned around and headed back towards the portal. As it was going towards the portal, though, I actually seen 3 7-foot angels appear. They were sort of a white and silver. Angels come in colours. These
Yes.
were white and silver, very, very stockily built. And they grabbed a hold of this thing and threw it through the portal. And the portal just sealed straight up. It was quite incredible at the time. So the one thing I'm not that keen on is demonic work. I know there are people that are particularly fond of it, but from the first experience that I had, I'm not too keen. But
No,
it
I
doesn't mean
don't.
to say that it doesn't mean to say that's not where I'd be going, because I do a lot of soul release work, which has taken evil spirits off people,
Yes.
and that in itself can be quite scary.
Oh,
Um, but it's just something I know. I'm protected. I know I've got backing of a huge spirit team, so I feel safe enough doing it. But the demonic side, it's not as cut and dried.
oh.
It's a little bit more. There's too many questions for me yet because I don't know enough.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes, I totally understand that. And even I've been in positions or I felt uncomfortable. And I've even stated, well, you know what, I've taken a few steps back and said, look, this isn't my comfortable area of research. So I'm going to leave you
yeah.
guys to, I mean, you hear a lot of different stories where if the people are open to that, they're open to all sorts of different things. But of course, I think sometimes demonic things or occult type stuff is attracted to those that are able to experience them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of goes hand in hand. And I've heard many people tell me that there's an encompass of many different things that they've experienced all their life, including those things, which you might refer to as demonic. And of course, it's not for everybody, and I can totally understand that. But obviously, you're obviously doing some good work, because I think it's a bit of a disillusion as to how many people do actually have and are affected by these, not very nice spirits, what you might say. It's more so than you would initially think, actually, because it doesn't really get the publicity, does it?
It doesn't get a publicity because it's not something that you shout about.
Mm.
It's not as common as you think. It is quite rare. In my experience, I've done three or four possibly, or maybe half a dozen. So it isn't very common, but it can be a complete life changer for somebody. It's a hard thing to talk about, to get it out there, because who's going to believe you? The
Yeah,
first
well,
thing you've got to do is believe in the fact that when you're dead, you're not dead. There's the first thing you've got to believe in. Then you've got to believe in the fact that there's people that can still hang about here and cause havoc. So there's all sorts of obstacles to get over when it comes to that. Eventually, somebody has to be influenced. A bigger influencer has to get involved in this at some stage, that people can get behind. And the more people get behind it, I suppose, the more it'll be, I'm not going to say researched, but looked at properly, even scientifically. But scientific analysis changes every 5 seconds anyway. So what's right today might not be right tomorrow. So
absolutely.
that's not the be all and end all.
Yeah, yeah. That's what science says. It's always, they're
It's a
always
changeable.
changing. Hope, always. I think it's interesting though, Stephen, that you've obviously started with maybe a singular experience. I'm curious about what was that? What you might refer to as initiated experience, that very first one. How old was
First
you?
one, I
Yeah.
was 6 years old,
Thoughts?
and I had a sleepover with my best friend. He's basically like my brother. We've known each other since we were three. That's 54 years we've been friends. And I woke up middle of the night, and in the corner of my bedroom was this a boy that looked about our age, but in truth he was possibly about 10, 12 years old, because he looked Victorian, Edwardian. So, and people of that age, they didn't grow as quickly or as big, because obviously they didn't have the feet, they didn't feed as much and whatever. So he was possibly 10, 12, 13 years old. But he stood in the corner of my room, and he had a cat, a spirit cat on his shoulder, and he just basically smiled. And I woke my friend up, and I said, "Did you see that?" He says, "Oh yes." So
Oh,
two wee boys seeing a ghost for the first time, and then he just disappeared. But he came back a number of times when I was younger, and then my nephews, who two of which have quite a few years between them, they've both seen the boy even in the last sort of 10, 12, 15 years. So he's still around. I have I'm not too sure whether he's just visiting or whether he's stuck. I haven't really been back to the house, so I mean, I have been told by another medium friend of mine that he still hangs around me, but I don't feel him. In truth, I don't feel him. No, I have to say that. But that was the first time, and it was weird because I was 6 years old, and not really much else happened till I got to about 15. And that was like, so I saw my first ghost, and then when I was 15, I was in my bed, and I was woke up at, I don't know what time in the morning, and I couldn't move. All I could do was blink. And at the bottom of my bed was what you can only class as a grey alien. So grey aliens weren't talked about, and I wasn't really into the subject in 1983. A long, long time ago. And then I thought, well, okay, hang on a second. I've just seen a ghost when I was little, so I know they're real. Now I've seen an alien. I had a feeling, but now I know they're real. So that was basically, I think the fact that that's my first two experiences was first ghost, first, second alien. That was giving me a message which I ignored, to be perfectly honest, for another 20 years at least.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting, isn't it, Marcus? Because, we talk to a lot of people, don't we? And we always find that there's some experience that's taking place usually between the ages of 5 and 7, And it normally, I'd say high percentage, are bedroom visitations. Mine was in 1974, my first one. I was 7 years old and in the bedroom. And then that kind of opened the door for other things. It is so strange that people seem to have those same accounts.
I'll tell you the reason why. And in spirit terms, when your spirit's dropped into the physical body, it's done just before the birth. So you grow as a fetus. You're not really you're a sentient being, I suppose, but you're not really a functioning human being until that spirit's dropped in. So you come from spirit, you're dropped into a body, and at that point, you're very open to seeing
Yeah,
spirit.
you're
So
close.
what
You're
tends
close
to
to the
happen up to about the age of 7, once you get to about the age of 7, that fades away. Not with everybody,
no.
and it
Yeah.
and it did with me. It faded away with me to a point. But then what happened when I was a teenager is I got another dimension to look at, which was otherworldly. So, but it does tend to, at the age of 7, 6, 7 years old, you tend to lose it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, Richard, because like the first time I experienced anything paranormal, I was like exactly that age, 6 or 7 years old. So that makes perfect sense to me. What I want to come back to, Stephen, though, is you mentioned there that you've had experiences dating back to being a child, several experiences. Um, it's interesting you mentioned that other people saw like this little boy as well. How where do you think this comes from? Do you think whatever is behind these experiences, it chooses the individual? Are they chosen, or is it something that is it a part of your mind that you can just access that most other people can't, or is it somewhere in between the two? Is it an external intelligence that you can access? I mean, that fascinates me as to what exactly it might be.
Well, the spirit world is an external intelligence, but it's also an internal intelligence because we're all connected to the original source. So
Mhm.
whether you're chosen or whether you choose to be chosen is a question that I can't answer. Because when you're in spirit, you do have certain choices when you come to Earth, none of which I can explain because I can't remember, but I do know there are choices. And because I don't really need to know, I don't know. So I don't know. I mean, as an example, I've been here twice before that I know of. And I don't want to spoil it for people if they want to buy the book because it's quite a good one,
Yeah.
good wee story.
No spoilers.
I don't want to spoil the book for anybody. Um, but I was a soldier in my first life, a soldier in my second life, and I'm
Oh,
now in this life. I've tried to get in the RAF twice. I've tried to get in the territorial army. I was accepted into the police, but then failed the medical on because I had an organ missing. Um, and so I've tried to get a uniform in this life and be knocked back at every point. So I'm a healer in this. So when soldier, healer.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's an intelligence behind that as well.
Well, I said
Yeah.
to read here, Stephen, because I find it fascinating. The subject of reincarnation. I mean, we spoke about this earlier on, communicated, but when we were speaking earlier. I find it interesting that you mentioned that you were a soldier in past lives. I've had a recurring dream since I was a young child. I've had it hundreds of times. So it's the same. I'm in a hole or a dugout. I am a soldier, and it seems like it's a modern war, whether it's the Second World War or Vietnam. I don't know. I'm hiding. I have a gun. Suddenly I'm
Mm.
found, and basically the dream ends. That's what in me as a person, I would class myself as quite anti-gun. So I find it interesting, one that I suspect that could be a memory of a past life. And I find it interesting that I've
Mm.
taken that stance. And you were saying that you've had a past life as soldiers, and you basically would like to have been a soldier in this life. So
Mm-hmm.
how did it? Two questions really. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And how did you come to realize that you had lived before? Was it through dreams? Was it through memories that flashed up? What
It
triggered
was the without trying to spoil the story, it was the incident with the demon and then the angels. And then I asked my guardian angel, I says, why am I so fascinated with the city that I live in? And why do I feel as if I've been here before? And I'll leave it there. And at that point, I was told
that? Right.
where I used to live and what I did. And so that's when my head just exploded at that point. I went, goodness gracious me.
Yeah,
Didn't know that, I thought.
it's fascinating. It really is.
Yeah.
Those things sort of fascinating. And not, I don't think enough research is done in regarding past life. Certainly, research.
You don't need to research it. Deja vu is a perfectly good explanation for past life.
Yeah, I can believe that. I've had those a few times in places
Yeah,
where they look
yeah, you've been
familiar,
there
but
before
I've never been. Yeah,
because you have.
yeah,
The thing is, when your body has to eventually let go of your soul, that's the rule. The body lets go. The body knows when it's going to die. The soul and the body, they have a contract. One lets go, the other. When you go back to spirit, you remember the life you were in, but when they put you back, you forget everything before.
Yeah, I
And I think
suppose.
that's because, and I think that's because you have to each life that you take, you have to learn from your mistakes. And I think they put you back in a way. This is my personal thoughts and the thoughts of many, many, many mediums, because that's what we're told from spirit. That's the
Yeah,
kind of thing. I don't know how you live in this life will dictate your next one.
yeah,
Whatever you do in this life must be paid for when you return to spirit. So, which is where you get your heaven and hell from. Hell doesn't exist, but it is a hellish existence if you're a bad person. When you go to spirit, you instead of turning left, you turn right.
true, absolutely. Stephen, what about poltergeist disturbances? Have you come across those in your
I've had
world of
one. I've had one. It was in my sister's house
Oh, it was
many years ago.
family home, was it?
I was 19. I forgot about that when I was 19. She had a friend staying over, and apparently this friend had dabbled with a Ouija board. So that's obviously a red flag. So
Yes.
she called me to come down, and I didn't know anything about anything really. I just thought, well, I knew ghosts existed, and I thought, well, that's all it is. And she had said the previous night the windows had been opened, the telly had been turned on, and the radio had been turned on and blasted up loud. I thought, okay, that's okay. That sounds like something that I've heard before. So I'm sitting in the living room, and I wasn't a medium. I was just a teenager, and I felt angry, and I put my glass of water in the middle of the carpet. The glass of water then lifted up and smashed itself off the side of the fireplace. So I thought, right, okay, there is a poltergeist in here. So as a teenage angry boy, what I did was I stood up and I started to say, right, square go, let's have a go. Let's come on and take me on, come on. And I was threatening it to basically leave, and it went quiet. And I thought, I'm going to go and see the priest. I had a priest living up the street. So we got him out of his sick bed. He had a severe cold, and he blessed the house, walking around and saying a prayer. And I thought, that's quite amazing. But when he'd finished, at that age, I actually felt energy. For the first time, I would say the energy went from 100 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour in the space of a few minutes. It was quite amazing. I thought whatever that thing was has gone. I knew it had gone. And then again, every science spirit sent me, I just ignored at that point. I
That's
wasn't ready.
really interesting because if we look at the science, they always proclaim that they've always got the answers, haven't they? Years ago it was always, oh well, poltergeist is just spent up energies from adolescence and they're using PK. The thing is, if that was the case, then how would a blessing have any effect? I've always argued this point many, many times, but they're quite
Mhm.
steadfast, these scientists, aren't they, at the parapsychological departments? They've always said to have the answers, such as,
Mm.
you remove the focus sometimes, you remove the phenomena, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes
Mhm.
it has been poltergeist disturbances in a home when
Mhm.
the individuals or the family have been relocated for the night or two. So again, it's not written in stone, is it? So it's like
Yeah.
you said at the beginning, early on, science is okay for now until it progresses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You've
mean, I
had
think,
that many times, haven't we, Marcus, where
yeah,
it kind of goes against the grain what science says it is, and then you find out through the proper experiences from people out there, it's kind of opposes what they're saying.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I do agree. I think science has got a part to play in all this. And I do agree with what Stephen was saying earlier as well, that, we need to have a much bigger study on this across multiple fields, even fields that probably don't appear to be connected. But, obviously there's something behind all of this. I want to just go back though, Stephen, you mentioned about one of the first things that you or anybody contemplating, mediumship or the paranormal, they have to really believe that once you're dead, that's not it. There's something beyond this existence here. Now, you mentioned Malcolm Robinson. We were speaking to Malcolm Robinson a few weeks ago. One of the things we
Mhm.
touched on is, he was expressing his preference, if you like, for dealing in the paranormal as opposed to UFOs and aliens. And I asked him if is that because it tells you something about the human existence and what it means to be human, what it means to be here, about our reality. Is that something you would subscribe to as well? And do you think that was also why some people shy away from it? Because it does tell you about human existence.
I just think it comes down to people's fear factor. People are scared to openly admit something that they can't control, um, and they're scared of the unknown. They're frightened that what they have been told since they were born, that most of it's not right,
Mhm.
and I think that unsettles them. So I can't remember the rest of the question. I'm getting old.
Well, it was basically if you think it does indeed tell you something about the human existence, like looking beyond human existence for answers,
Right.
basically.
It tells you a lot about the human existence if you're prepared to open your eyes, in the fact that it actually tells you more than anything else about the first rule in physics. So when scientists decide that when you're dead, you're dead, but then they ignore the fact the first rule in physics is energy cannot be created or destroyed. That goes completely against that statement.
Mhm.
So it's something that really it's my final argument. If someone starts to have a go and say, "Well, when you're dead, you're dead," that would be my final statement to say, "Right, well, how can that be a true statement in science?" And what I've just said isn't. You can't have it both ways.
Absolutely, that's true. And do you think, Stephen, that if does the spirit world just hang around permanently, or it's just are always around and we don't realize, or there is a transition for them to go from one place to another?
Right. So I was having this discussion with a young fella today who's just started out on his journey,
Mm.
for want of a better phrase. Um, and I refer the dimensions, and there are many, many, many dimensions because I've worked with two at least now, other than ours. I
Yeah.
look at them like a sandwich. So
Mm.
bread filling, bread filling, bread filling, bread filling, as big as you want. This sandwich can be a massive sandwich, a doorstep.
Mm.
Each level is a different dimension. So, but with every sandwich, you can pour sauce in the top, and eventually it'll get through the layers. And I think the manipulation of that bread or that energy in a metaphorical state allows movement between the dimensions, and how you start that off. I think that I don't know how that works. I only know how if the top piece of bread is spirit and I'm the bit of lettuce or ham, I know how to climb up through and next to the spirit world by attunement. I know how to do that by meditation. But if something like a demon can come through and a demon does not belong in the spirit world, then it must be maybe the mustard that's below the ham, and it's managed to manipulate the same energy that everything exists around. How it does it, I have no idea,
Mm.
because I don't actually know physically. I have an idea how I connect the to between here and spirit, but I don't have a definitive answer on how it happens. It just happens because of technique and practice and a willingness to learn. Because
Mm.
every time a medium meditates, a guide will come to them and basically transfer energy which is transferred into knowledge or an ability. So the more a medium meditates, the more proficient that medium effectively will be.
Right.
But this doesn't happen. I don't know if you guys know the difference between a psychic and a medium. There's
Please
a big difference.
feel free
The,
to let us know on that, please.
a psychic will work with auras and energy and the person themselves, but they can't connect to spirit. A medium will actually we've got a direct phone line to spirit. So we can do the psychic bit. We can read auras and energy and stuff like that here as a psychic can, but we can also connect in another dimension. So it's a different type of psychic ability, and there's far more to learn as far as I'm aware, and so many layers to get through before you become proficient in it, because it does take years. Even if you meditated every day for the next 2 years, you possibly wouldn't be as proficient as someone who'd been doing it for 10 years and meditated twice a week.
Right.
And then the other thing is, even spirit guides don't know what they're doing. They do know what they're doing, but they don't know what they're transferring through to you. They're just transferring energy the same way as a spiritual healer would do it with an angel. So it's the same process. The spirit healer doesn't know what they're doing either. It's just energy that comes from the divine source in whichever shape or form it comes in, whether it's healing energy or whether it's knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting. Stephen, is your spirit guide, are you acquainted with your spirit guide? Did you know them? Or is it just some...
Well, I knew one of them.
Right.
I've had about, I think about 10 or 12.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure the number, but you can potentially have 40 to 50 within the life of a medium. You don't have one.
Right.
But that's not for me to say that a medium might just have one, but it's very unlikely, because one guide will not have the same abilities as 10, 12, 20, 30, because they all specialize in a different thing. But they don't tell you what they're actually, they tell you roughly what they're trying to do for you. So that's what they specialize, but they can't give you the ins and the outs of it for loads of different reasons. You don't need to know for a start, and it would probably be way above my understanding because I don't live in spirit.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Totally understand.
I mean, one thing I'd like to ask there, I mean, energies, me and Steve have spoken about energies before and how important it is. Just going back to the spirit guides, though, when you say you knew one of them, is it possible that at least some of these spirit guides are not spirits, but actually some manifestation of some other energy?
No,
we hear you don't believe that, you believe that they are definitely spirits that you're speaking to.
the spirit guides have been in spirit for a long time before they become guides, and even then, they're not guaranteed to be guides. The mediums that have passed away, that have lived here and been really excellent mediums,
Right.
there's no guarantee whatsoever that they'd end up being guides.
Right.
And that decision's made on a level in which no one on the earth will understand.
Yes.
Because it's above our pay grade, for want of a better phrase.
Well, yes, absolutely. Do you think all spirit guides were originally a living being?
No, they were living energy, but they haven't all touched the surface of the earth. And I only found that out last year. One of my guides, and I'm not going to start saying names. I do know my guides by name, most of them. One of them never touched the earth, which really shocked me.
Wow.
So he was miscarried.
Wow.
So at that point, when he's dropped into the body rejected the soul.
Right.
So he never touched the earth, but he's quite happy.
That's fascinating.
It really is. That's really fascinating.
It fascinated me. It fascinated me.
I bet it did.
I mean,
you do assume that they were always they were living individuals. But then
that's what I thought. But on that one occasion, he'd never touched the earth.
Just fascinating stuff. I mean, Stephen, you mentioned about, we're speaking about spirit guides and angelic beings and demons, and these are obviously just manifestations. Do you think if you look back to ancient writings, for example, biblical writings, creation stories, Do you think these are kind of early tellings of these entities? You know, people's experiences with these entities. Then, do you think we can find any truth in such ancient writings to paranormal manifestations today?
There must be. There must be, because even mythical creatures like fairies, I've seen a fairy. I've got a photograph of a fairy. I saw one 2, 3 years ago. I've seen a demon. I haven't got a photograph of it, but I drew it. So it can only be, if I've seen it, then other people have seen it. And somebody's written it down at some stage, turned it into a story. But you know, that story might have originated um, through a spirit guide to an ancient set of people who were instructed to write the story to allow the people on Earth to live harmoniously. But sadly, that was also rewritten in several other stories. And those people decided to use those stories against each other and cause wars. So it sort of backfired on itself. So
Yeah.
the idea was great to allow a set of rules and guidance, but you could also look at it the other way, that it was designed for to keep people down and have a leadership structure to 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 to
Control.
do to do what we know now. So who knows? But
Yeah, it's interesting. Your abilities, Stephen, are they genetic by chance? I'm just wondering if is it something
um,
passed from grandparents or parents or anything
uh,
like that?
my nana was a tea leaf reader, and my
Right.
great aunt was a medium as well. So
Oh,
potentially,
no.
yes, but not in all cases. I
Hmm.
think I'm certainly the most advanced of all my family in the job of medium. But
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
I mean,
aye,
would you say, Stephen, is it something? I suppose, is it something that anybody could learn, or do you have to have something triggered inside your mind, your subconscious mind? Is it something that anybody could turn a hand to, or
well, the truth is everybody is psychic. Your intuition is a type of psychic ability. So that ability is buried in your soul, and your pineal gland is the bit that can access it. We all have a third eye. The thing is, because we live in a materialistic world, we have forgotten how to access the basics of how we used to live. We were hunter gatherers at one time, so we didn't have any distractions. So when we had downtime, we didn't stick Coronation Street on. What we did was we tuned into um, the higher side, even to get advice on how to fix the fire or strip a carcass off a deer or hunt or whatever they had the advice, or just to go to war with the next tribe. They would do that as second nature. But because as we got older, we got distractions, we got money, we got issues that we never used to have when we were back in the day. That ability got less and less. Because it got less and less, it was seen as something which was um, we shouldn't have. It was seen as something that could cause harm rather than cause good. And for centuries and centuries, people like me were burned at the stake or hung
yeah,
because it was then known as witchcraft. But that could be because as the system we lived in became far more class related. You had the king or the queen, and they wanted to keep all the peasants from revolting. That could have been, I don't know, somebody coming in there and saying, right, that person's strange. That person might teach that person that they can go beyond this life and educate them to a point where they could become dangerous and teach. A bit like, it's probably a bit like, I'm not into the Bible or anything, but a bit like Jesus. Jesus went around teaching and healing and all that. And I think the Romans saw him as a threat back in time, and we all know what happened.
Yeah.
And that basically that in itself is a story in the Bible which tells you more about the human condition at that time and how far it had came from hunter gatherer. in small groups, small family groups and tribes. And that was, I mean, the Roman Empire, as we all know, was the acquisition of wealth through the punishment and death of people. So if you teach somebody, and Jesus did teach a lot of people about God and whatever else he taught about, that's a dangerous thing to the powers that be.
I totally agree. Totally agree. When you were first initiated through experience, if you were to walk into a location and you are triggered in regards to, there's a presence there, what is that trigger for you? Is it a feeling? Is it a skin reaction, or do you just aware?
I'll get a feeling, and then I'll have a word in the ear from a guardian angel.
Right. So it's through an emotion. You know
I'll
what?
feel it. I'll either feel it on the hairs of my arms and my face.
Right. Okay. No.
But the first bit to feel is probably the face, the hairs on my face, the cilia hairs on my face. It actually feels like you walked into a spider's web.
Yes.
That's the feeling of spirit. And then I'll ask my guardian, is there anything I need to worry about? And he'll tell me what's in the room. And tell me whether I need to do some sort of release, rescue, or just ignore it, or try and communicate if it's safe. He'll tell me whether it's safe or not. Now, my guardian angel is a big part of my book.
Right.
And again, I don't really want to spoil it.
Yeah. I know.
Can I just ask a quick question about the guardian angel? You said that mediums have multiple guardian angels during their lifetime. You also
only have
mentioned
one.
Intuition.
Mediums have one
guides. Sorry, I apologize. That's my error.
Right.
So multiple guides. What I was going to ask is, we talked about intuition and how that is basically like a paranormal event or ability. Does everybody have a guardian angel? Does everybody have spirit guides around?
Yes,
Just cannot, speak to them.
Everyone has a guardian angel.
Okay.
Everyone can speak to every spirit. The difference being, I can hear them back, and I can work with them. So you can speak to your relatives that have passed over; they'll hear you. They hear you. They hear your thoughts, never mind your words, because thoughts are energy anyway. So everybody does have a guardian angel because there's a time for you to live and a time for you to pass. Now, as with anything in life, that can be, it's not perfect. Sometimes it goes wrong. Sometimes you choose to make it go wrong. But we're all on the clock.
Well,
and the strange thing is, in spirit, time doesn't mean anything. It's a human invention. For example, I did a lot of work in Culloden. They're still fighting on the Battle of Culloden.
Really?
Okay. They're still fighting. And again, it's a really major story in the book. But so I'll not go into it in a big way. But they're still fighting 250, 60 years later.
It's a shame.
There's not many of them now because I did a lot of work up there to help them. But there was one clan that told me to walk on.
Oh, right.
And I'm not the only one that's heard the battle still raging. There are mediums that have been up there and listened to it. And the thing is, though, most mediums don't do rescue work. And I don't know for the reason why. I was chosen to do it. Maybe because I wanted to, but I was chosen to do it. So
yeah, that's really interesting.
So time doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I've heard of things like this where battlegrounds and they sometimes occasionally seen and still, or even heard, or both. In some cases, it seems like you're stuck in a. Would you say it's like being stuck in a cycle of not knowing that it's just repeated history that you're going over?
Well, some of them won't know they're dead, right? Well, not every spirit knows they're dead. If you die violently, quickly, but there is a point when they've got to know they're dead. But because time doesn't mean anything in spirit, it goes by so quickly. There's every chance that they don't know they're dead. And I didn't get to the point where I was going to ask the ones that didn't want me to help them out because I was abruptly told to go away. So they were busy trying to kill the English army. even though there was very few of them left. Most of them had crossed over the English army, but there was quite a few Jacobites still there. That's just one battlefield. So
One, yeah, yeah.
just
Do you
one.
find
And
that,
this,
Stephen? Do you find that some of them just don't want to, or they're fearful of, of change?
right. So some of them don't want to. They want to stay and fight. Some of them know that if they cross over, they're in trouble, because as soon as you die, you remember you're a spirit, and you know what if you've done naughty things, you know that you're not going to be in a good place.
Judged.
And some of them don't know they're dead. Did I say that?
Yeah, yeah,
Some of them
yeah.
are so shocked that they miss the bus, for want of a better phrase.
Right. So there's a few different reasons, isn't
So
there?
there's different reasons.
Right. That's
I mean,
interesting.
no matter which way you go down on this stuff, it's absolutely fascinating. We were talking about spirit guys. I'm just going to stay with that a moment because, you know, what I want to ask is, in life, there's good and bad people. So, what are your thoughts on, these spirit guys and spirits, energies, entities? Is it the same in the spirit world where you've literally got, particular agendas? Could some of these spirits and energies be trying to influence humanity in a bad way? That's not beneficial for humanity. Do we have to have a certain amount of trust in all of this?
Very possibly, you might find that the really bad people that have lived, Hitler, for example, or whoever, Stalin, Hitler, whoever, right? They might have, and there's no way to prove this,
Mhm.
have an attachment of some kind from a previous person that stayed here and attached themselves to make that person even more evil. That's potentially a possibility. There's also the demonic side, that the demonic side could break through into this realm and attach itself to those really poor, really bad people. And there could be an influence that way as well. Or they could just be bad, because they're all like anything, like there's good and bad. If we didn't have bad, we wouldn't know what good was.
True enough. True enough.
Actually, yes, that's very true. I'm curious about your book, Stephen. I mean, it's how long has it taken for you to put this together? Why is it titled Psychic Salesman? Because I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I thought it caught my eye. It caught my eye with the cover, caught my eye with the title. I'm
Yeah.
just curious how long it took you and why you came up with that information, why you came up with that with
Well,
Steve.
I'm going to put the light on
Okay.
because
That's okay. Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit dark here.
Perfect.
Can you see me now?
I see
Yes,
you
very good.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can. Oh, good.
that's too bright. Right. Okay. Right. So I'm a salesman to trade. I've
All right.
done that job for nearly 30 years. So it was just the whole idea of doing the book was to I wasn't going to do a book. It was my spirit guide that said, right, you in the office. What about why? This was during COVID. During
All
COVID,
right.
I lost my job, okay, because of COVID, and I was from time to time in my life I struggle with mental health. So the my guide basically said that you need to go and write your memos down, both to make sure that you're stable and to fill in your time. And because when I first started being medium, there were certain readings in church that I did which I remembered, and I was told, write that down, write that down. Right? So I wrote a bunch of stories down, and there are
Right.
other ones where I would say, do I need to write this down? Not that one. Right. So spirit from a very early time of been studying how to be a medium had already planned for me to do this. So
Ah,
they during the start of COVID, they got me to examine my life, because my life was a bit rough to start with. Um, so I needed to heal from that, and I had so much to tell. I had so many stories to tell, and also I had so much stuff to pass on to other people that have been through the same scenario of abuse. Um, so if I could write a story which entailed, there was a reason for it, COVID, right? There was a theme. I'm a salesman, and there was
yeah.
the other theme was I went from rags to not riches because I'm not wealthy, but I'm not skint either. Okay, but when I was younger, we were really poor. So there's an element of that won't keep you back from where you started to where you end up, and also they knew that at some stage I was going to be doing not just readings, but I was going to be a healer, I was going to be a rescuer, I was going to be a releaser, and also they knew that I'd had these experiences with UFOs.
Yeah.
The spirit world work with other dimensions. They work with the aliens. Okay, the
Yes.
the reason I know this is because when I channeled the aliens over in Bathgate, what happened was this alien species were an underwater species. When I saw them, they were wrapped in a giant bubble, individual bubbles, and there was fluid in the bubbles. After they channeled me, we went home. A few days later, I felt really funny. I didn't feel right. I felt tired. I felt stressed, and I just didn't feel myself. And I've had a spirit attach me before, and it's felt a little bit like that. So
Yeah.
when I entered meditation, I asked my guide. I said, "There's something wrong here," and he immediately called for a spirit surgeon because the spirit was a mirror image of this one. The surgeon's there. He came in. He says, "What have you been doing?" So I told him what I've done, and he says, "Right, okay. I didn't think you'd be doing that this early." I.e., if you read between the lines,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
says, "Well, I'll go and see." What happened was the alien, when he channeled me, had left some slime on my chakras, my energy centers, which had drained my power, my
Right.
energy.
Right.
So he cleaned it up, and he says, "He's whoever's worked with you." And I told him who it was, and he went, okay, as if to say that's okay. You will. He basically says, "Try not to do that too many times because it can affect you adversely." He'd left my chakras in a better state than they were before they started.
Really?
And
Oh,
really, because I always felt with these aliens, I felt relaxed, I felt safe, I felt love from them, to be perfectly honest, because they're a nice species. Um, so that's how I know that they do know about other worlds and other dimensions. They just don't get most mediums involved because there's a big enough job here with people.
yeah. I'm curious if
Like,
you say like UFO entities or extraterrestrials. Do you think that it's more an interdimensional phenomenon that's interacting with us, or do you think they really
both,
are traveling the
both,
vast depths of space?
both,
Both?
100% both. The
Ah,
reason being, if I hadn't spoke to the Agnetans last year, I'd have said possibly just all interdimensional. But because I've spoke to a species from Agneta, they don't live in this solar system.
right.
Um, so I do know, and here's the great thing. They told me they'd been here for 300 years since just before the Industrial Revolution, because they knew what the planet would end up looking like. So they've been working on the powers that be ever since then,
Yeah, it's
and they
interesting you
still
say.
haven't they still
Yeah.
haven't let them in.
I mean, do you think they're aware of future events? Do you think spirits are aware of future events, or ETs are a
Well,
future?
spirit know the future events, definitely. Right? They
Yeah.
won't they won't let on because we have to live our lives. We're here for a reason, every single one of us.
Right.
Whether alien species know the future events, it's possible, because if they're capable of those vast distances, then they might be capable of time travel. So yes, it's very possible.
Yeah.
I'll
There's a
just
bunch.
ask about spirits. You mentioned spirits are certainly aware of future events. Would that play into people who believe that they can see the future? Are they actually interacting with a spirit there, then that kind of is letting them see a little bit, or is that misjudged, or what's your?
I don't know. I don't know that question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Hmm.
All I know is that whenever I ask spirit what's coming in front of me, they'll never tell me. So I doubt that's going to be the case. Um, I suspect that is just someone from possibly the future. The thing is, we don't. There's dimensions, but there is also time. So there are cases that I've read about where there's people in modern fabrics and digital cameras from the 19. They've been filmed from the 1930s. You shouldn't be here. You know that. So I suspect it's not spirit that's telling them that. I suspect it possibly is us in the future. Who
Yeah.
knows? Isn't that exciting?
It
Absolutely.
really is. It really is. And there's a lot of talk over the last few months now about space time or outside our space time,
Mm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
and what might be able to exist there, and things that might be able to come from that to our reality and stuff. And we're learning every day, really, about, the world around us is not what we've been taught or what we really even think is a tiny little piece of it. But we are getting there. And I know that there's some very interesting research in quantum physics now. It's pointing towards the evidence that there are a lot of things around us, that we might not be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely
Yes.
correct. That's absolutely, like you say, the stuff, even the human, the human, what humans can see, the physical scale, we can only see X amount, and there's stuff happening all the time. One thing I wanted to touch on, Stephen, you mentioned about healing people, and you've said this is particularly important to you. I get the impression, you correct me if I'm wrong, that this is of utmost importance of everything that you're doing. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? I mean, what do you mean when you say you're healing people, and what does that entail? I'd imagine it's quite unique per case, but if you could talk to me about that a bit, that'd be good.
Well, there's two types of healing that I can do. One's hands-on healing, which is basically I will stand there and I'll feel an angelic presence who will siphon divine source through me into the person I have my hands around. And there's another form whereby I ask the higher side, all my healing angels, to send energy, positive energy to people wherever in the world at whatever time. And it's you can say anybody can do that. Anybody can just think about somebody and help them heal by just a positive thought and love.
Yeah.
It's not
Essentially,
just a
a
medium
modern
that can do
version of
that.
a prayer, would you say, Stephen? It's just a modern version of a prayer without the religious
I suppose
aspect to
so.
it.
I suppose so. I because well, it is. I suppose that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Mm.
Steve, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's fascinating stuff there.
I'm always interested in this sort of thing. I've questioned other people about this when they've been healers, and it's different for them as well. It's different, like Stephen's saying, it's different for different ones. For some that got into healing, they discovered that it wasn't permanent for them. They would have to reattend, to keep going. And for some, it seemed to be permanent, So, like I say, it's very difficult to write out some type of rule book when we don't understand, the complexities of it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's really,
Stephen, do you feel, who knows why any of us do anything, right? But do you feel, that you've actually almost been called to do this type of work from something higher than yourself? Or do you think it's just something that you personally want to do, whatever the reason might be?
Well, when I first started attending the church, the spiritual church, I expressed an interest to be a medium. That interest was heard, and I was put into action basically. So now I don't know whether that would happen to everybody who expresses to be a medium. And the thing is, being a medium is a very very tough task.
Mm.
It even just being an empath is bad enough because you'll absorb people's energy to
yes.
which point where you absorb too much negative and it can make you ill. Well, being a medium's is like that plus that and plus all the different taxes you can imagine. Stack them on top of that because you're dealing with a lot of healing. You're dealing with a lot of pain coming from spirit to a person that you're speaking to. And if you don't empty that every now and then, it can send you a little bit potty. So it is very difficult, especially in the early days where you're so keen. You want to learn faster than spirit can tell you or teach you. You want to go faster, but it's never at your pace, it's at theirs.
That's
Because they
right.
know you.
Mm.
They know you because they know your soul. Because your soul's still attached to heaven, so they can see every part about you, and they know where and when and how, and to teach.
Hmm. Do you bring your work home with you, Stephen? That's the question, isn't it? Do you ever
Do
do
I
that?
what?
Bring your work home with you?
Well, my mediumship.
Yes. I mean, spirit, things like that. Did he ever stay with you or at your home?
Do my, in what context?
Well, I mean, if you're going out to help people and stuff, do they ever follow you back home, or do you bring them back home with you, or
Um,
do they have an impulse to follow you?
the people that I help, the
Spirit, does spirit have an impulse to follow you back home, or anything like
my family follow me occasionally. If I want to speak to any of my family that have passed, I can speak to them in seconds, and I can
Right,
have a conversation with them if I need them. I don't bring my work home because when I'm finished working with spirit, I switch off.
right.
Now that doesn't mean to say that they won't call on me in the street and say, "How mate, I need a hand. How mate," and I'll ignore them for a couple of minutes until they keep persistently asking me. And I
Yes,
say, "What do you want? What do you want?" And if it's something I can help them with, I will.
right. Yeah.
I mean,
And
Steve,
generally, nine times out of ten, it's just give someone a message or to help them cross over because they missed the bus.
Yeah.
fascinating stuff. Well, what keeps you interested in this, Stephen? I mean, that sounds like a silly question because it's fascinating, it really is. But what really keeps you interested in this? You know, are you hoping to find out more about? Again, it sounds silly. What's beyond the veil, or you know, why are you so interested still after all these years?
If you understood what I know, that it's like a fat kid in a sweet shop. He's not going to stop eating sweets, right? And I know I'm not the slim lad I used to be, so it's a bit like it's like me in an off license or a whiskey shop. I just want more of that and more of this and more of that. It just I can't stop. I was born a nosy sod, right? But I also was born curious as well as being nosy. So if you give me something to look at and it fascinates me, it just then becomes a passion. But it's something that I care about. So I've
Mm.
tried to stop. There's two occasions I've decided to stop going to church, and one was for about a week. Another one was about 3 weeks. And on both occasions, I was kicked back to church. I had no
Right.
choice. I had no option. I felt this pull. Although I didn't want to, I had no option. I ended up going back. So
Right. Right. The book that you've wrote, when was it released? And there it is. I'm really interested in the cover. Did you come up with that design for the cover yourself?
I did. Um, that was I told the graphic designer what I wanted, where I wanted them, and how I wanted it to be.
Right. Just looks very, very familiar. I just can't. It's like I've seen it before somewhere. Yeah. Studio. Yeah. Graphic designer. Was that? Well, I'm not gonna. I don't know. Should I say? Is that? Was it Dario who did the designing for it?
So the first design was Dario, um,
I think I
and
saw spot
it
it.
was marvelous, but my publisher couldn't go through with the
Yeah.
final public health reasons.
That's fine, yeah, because Dario's part of our team. So
Aye,
that's why I've seen it or seen something like it, and I
yeah.
think it wasn't
I've
the
got the
same.
other I've got
Right.
the other copy. I've got the other copy in the bookshelf. But I just want because I was going with another publisher, and it's not what I wanted. I wanted to stay with my existing publisher, but because I was going with another publisher, I just wanted to get a new design to
Right.
to to make it
Right.
a clean break. So
And who are the publishers? Are they British or
it's Publish Nation.
all right, okay. Yeah. And
Yeah.
where can you get hold of this book? Do you have a specific? I don't say I know it's Amazon, but do you actually sell it through a website of your own or anything like that?
Well, I've got a landing page now. I don't know whether I can sell it direct. I suspect I probably can't because it's done through Ingram Spark, who's huge distributor.
Yeah.
So the book's advertised on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, eBay, Waterstones,
Yeah,
and
it's got quite.
umpteen places around the world.
Yeah, they're very
And
good.
you buy it on the internet, and then it comes through the Ingram Spark, who print it and just and send it. So I don't think I can bypass that.
No, no.
But what you can do on my landing page, they can go. It takes you straight through to Amazon. So
Right, yeah, they are very good. They do put that out quite wide, and they like to maintain control over these things as well.
aye,
But
well, they've got to. They're a business.
yeah, yeah. Marcus, have you anything you want to
Yeah,
ask?
Stephen. I mean, before we ask you what you've got upcoming and future plans, what I really would like to ask you about, and we ask most people this who are on the Anomaly project, is where do you see paranormal research going in the future? Where would you like to see it going? I mean, me and Steve are of the mindset really that we need to get different fields of interest working together. We've touched on this already. What are your thoughts on
Well, I would like to see programs which cross the genres. So, because I know that spirit and other dimensions, stroke UFOs, aliens, they're all connected.
that? Yes.
I'd like a program to discuss the potential of that. I would
Yes.
also like, I mean, the perfect place to see everything that you need to see is Rosslyn Chapel.
Right.
Oh, yes.
I did a report on Rosslyn Chapel when I went there. We went on my holidays to Edinburgh in March, and we went there. I was there before it was a meeting. I was there afterwards, and everything that we talked about now is in Rosslyn Chapel, either inside or outside. So I would like people to start not just specializing in one bit. I would like them to basically go right now. We know this exists, that exists, and that exists. How do they interact?
Absolutely.
Because I think that's where it needs to go. I think it also needs to. We're all the media talk about is the old cases,
Yep.
the old tired cases, and although they're very very important, they're not even looking at the new stuff, which is equally as important. But they're not looking at it, so no one's wanting to come forward with their evidence. There are many paranormal groups out there who are desperate for cases to look at, but they're getting the cases, they're doing the reports, and nobody's taking them on.
No.
Nobody's bringing them to the fore, apart from podcasters. Very important. But
Yes.
mainstream media isn't even looking at us. They're just going digging up the old stuff. There are. I mean, I'm on. We had Britain next week on Blaze channel Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and they are starting to stretch the elastic band a little bit.
Mm.
I think so. More niche programs like that that look at all sorts of different elements of weirdness is what's the next step. That needs to be done. But also, we need to have weight behind the evidence. So governments need to start opening up their files properly.
Yep.
None of this letting bits out at a time because they're really scared that we'll go berserk. They're really scared they're going to lose power.
I know.
That's the thing. That's why they're not letting it out. They don't want to educate everybody,
Mm.
and that's your job. That's my job.
Yeah, it's got to go at some time. It can't last forever, can it? It's
No.
we've got to advance and get a better understanding of the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree about TV programs and things because it's like they're stuck in a loop. It's just regurgitation.
That's all it is.
So much more to understand, and yet I do not know why production companies will just are they fearful of just joining some of these subjects together because you don't seem to even see that in TV shows, very rarely on series or documentaries.
Life's always about who you know. So it might be something as simple as they've never met somebody who crosses the genres.
Mm.
They've never met somebody with all the stuff in, which is in that book.
Yeah.
Salesman. Yeah. Now, I've got so much of it, I'm starting a second book. I'm on chapter 2 now, but I'm just getting the time because some of the stuff in the second book is just going to be as daft as the stuff in the first book. But it's all relevant, and it's all going to be a mixed bag of UFOs, a bit of demon work, a bit of angel work, lots of spirit work. And the exciting thing is, I've probably got enough for about half a book, maybe 2/3 of a book now. But we're going to be doing a lot of weirdy stuff this year anyway, sky watches and investigations and stuff. So that's all waiting to be put down in a report form. So, but we can only do the donkey work. Somebody with the money or somebody with the power needs to either let the truth out or talk about it.
Yes.
So the masses can see.
Well, they do need to educate the masses. They're stuck in the old days, aren't they? Well, most of the stuff that they tend to see on television, But absolutely, I'm so pleased you're doing another book as well because it's always good because your research continues. So your books will continue. But where's the main place to find your books on Amazon, would you say, if someone was to stop you in the street and say, how do I buy your book?
Probably the easiest place is Amazon, right? But it's you just have to type in a psychic salesman or my name, Stephen A. Bird, and it'll fire it up. But generally speaking, Amazon is the first thing that comes up.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good because people who do use, I mean, we do put information out, and I know I think we put some out on our social media pages
Mhm.
about your book as well. But we do look forward to the second book and the continued work. We'd love to have you back at some point, Stephen. Maybe when you get a little bit more into your second book, you'd be able to tell us some little bits and bobs without spoiling too much, of course. But it's
Well,
been
I already have told you about the Agnetans. That's in the second book.
Okay. Perfect stuff. Stephen, it's been absolutely fascinating. It really has been eye-opening. I mean, is there anything else you've got upcoming before we wrap this up? Any comments, anything of that nature? I mean, we look forward to your second book, obviously.
Well, unfortunately, I'm blessed with a nearly 60-year-old's brain, so I can't remember what's happening in the
Ah,
next few weeks. I just concentrate on what's happening today, and then we'll look at tomorrow. But we've got sky watches coming up. We've got investigations of different places as well. But off the top of my head, I can't think. I go day to day.
to
I don't follow
continue
you
work.
all there, Stephen. Steve,
Continue.
it's been a fascinating show. What are your thoughts before we call this a day?
I'm always fascinated. You know what? It's refreshing to have someone come on and say, "Look, it's all connected."
Yeah,
Those are the magic words. It's all connected. I love to hear that because it's a wake-up call to everybody out there. To realize that, look, do not sit in your own camps. It's just UFOs. It's just paranormal. You've got to move forward, and this is what Stephen's doing, and this is certainly what he's put into his book as well. So it's very refreshing to hear that. Absolutely.
absolutely.
If everything in the universe is energy, which it is, everything. Therefore, everything must be connected. So everything must be everything connected. So
Yes,
it cannot be connected.
exactly.
Completely
If that
agree.
makes any sense.
That makes
Wise
perfect sense.
words. Wise
Yeah,
words.
perfect sense. Yeah, I completely agree. I know Steve does. Stephen, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been absolutely brilliant. It's been excellent speaking with you. And we do want to speak to you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, boys. Cheers.
Yes, no
Stephen.
problem whatsoever. It's been absolutely brilliant. So, and thank you very much for joining us. Remember to leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media. And check out the anomalyprojectpodcast.com for articles, news, and updates. Until next time, goodbye and take care.